All right, so now you've got the basics. Let's talk about the things that can really amp up your kitchen, and as some people would say, could be a real game changer. First, this is one a lot of people can't live without, and that is a coffee maker. So depending on who you are, you may not need this every day, but I can guarantee you that you have friends that do. So you should have some method of making coffee, whether it's this boring old drip maker, a French press, espresso. We could go a whole video talking about the different ways to make coffee. We'll save that for another day. Next down the line is a crock pot. A crock pot is great because you can prep it in advance, throw it all in there, forget about it for hours, and then come back and you've got a meal ready and waiting. And it's also really great for keeping food warm. So when you have a party or you have people coming over, you can leave it in there, whether it's something healthy and nutritious or just a giant vat of queso like my wife Danielle likes to do. A new gadget that them kids are talking about these days is the Instant Pot. That is kind of like a crock pot and a pressure cooker combined. They have all these fancy buttons on it that allow you to do things like make yogurt and cook meals in a really fast time. Pretty cool. If you're interested in that, there's a whole world that you can dive into.
Speaking of a whole world spawned by the use of an appliance, you should know about something called sous vide. The words mean under vacuum in French. Let me explain. To sous vide, you put your food inside of a Ziploc bag and suck all the air out, hence vacuum. Then you put the bag into a pot of water that is heated to an exact temperature. Usually it's a fancy looking device like this that basically has a heating element and a propeller on it to circulate the water. Oftentimes you can even control these devices through your phone. And here's the beautiful part. You set it and forget it. Since it holds an exact temperature, you usually just set the sous vide temperature to whatever the food needs to be cooked to. For example, with a medium rare steak, set the sous vide to 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if you were grilling the steak, the cook time between raw and burnt is just a matter of minutes. But with sous vide, you have to overcook it by hours to affect the quality. Talk about easy. Lastly, to finish the cooking, usually you'll sear the food to give it that wonderful browning. Check out this picture to see the possible difference between a sous vide steak and a grilled one.
Next we have a blender. So we don't have a real blender shown here. Those are great because they've got a pitcher, and what we really like to do with them is make frozen mojitos. You can also use it for more responsible things like making salsas or healthy smoothies or boring things like that. But if you don't want the full on, you can get something here called an immersion blender or a stick blender. And these things are great because you can just get an individual cup, put in your ice cream, some milk and chocolate, and then you make a little chocolate milkshake. Or you can put that in your pot and actually blend your soup directly in the pot. So it's a pretty handy thing to have. Let's talk about another not so healthy thing, and that's a waffle iron. So you've probably seen these around, but in case you haven't, they're used to make Belgian waffles, and you can also use them for some other clever things. BuzzFeed has a whole thing on both savory and sweet things. You can make cinnamon rolls, you can make meals on it if you really want to. But that's really more of a fancy thing in my opinion. That'd be one lower on the list unless you really like waffles. Then we have the electric griddle. The electric griddle is basically like an electric stove, but it's nice because it's all one flat piece and you cook directly on it. So it's great for entertaining, especially we use it a lot when we have brunches. You make pancakes, eggs, bacon, all on the one platform, and then it's just one thing you've got to deal with. So we like it a lot. You can even get kinds that have sides on them, and those are great for preparing frozen meals. We have one that we like called the Voila brand. You just dump it in there and stir it around and let it sit, and out comes a delicious meal. Those are also great if you don't have access to a full stove. Then there's something called an air fryer.
We don't have one of those here, but an air fryer is essentially a small convection oven. In case you aren't familiar with the term, a convection oven is basically an oven but with a fan that moves the air around to cook the food faster. They call it an air fryer because they want you to think that you can get similar results as a deep fryer, but using only a tiny amount of oil. So it's healthier. In reality, air fryers do get food crispy, but it's definitely a different result than deep frying. If the idea of an air fryer interests you, consider getting a convection toaster oven. It can do everything an air fryer can, but more. And then you only have one appliance instead of two.
Then there's the rice cooker. Rice cookers are great if you eat a lot of rice. You can always just use a boring old pot and, measure and dump and sit there and stir and do all of that. Or with a rice cooker, you just dump in the rice, dump in the water, press the button, and forget about it. We have lots of friends who use this all the time. You can use it for regular old white rice, or you can dump in tomatoes and onions and garlic and make something that's actually pretty diverse in flavors. Then we've got the stand mixer. You may have seen one of these before. They're a staple in a lot of kitchens. This is kind of the appliance that has lasted for decades. And they actually do last a really long time if you treat them well. The downside of them is they're kind of expensive, but they can be used for a wide variety of things. Essentially, it's a motor that you put these different attachments onto. You've got like a dough hook, a whisk, a paddle, different things like that. And it even has a little attachment here that you can put a pasta maker, a sausage grinder, and other things. So you can do a lot with this guy. It's really big and important if you bake a lot, or if you're going to use any of those applications I mentioned. It could be really nice. If you don't want to buy it for yourself, do what we did. Put it on your wedding registry and be surprised when it comes that way. Okay, this one right here is a small little appliance. Some may even call it a gadget, but it's a salad shooter. And this is one that I've been messing around with a little more lately. And basically what it is you put in something to the top. It's called a salad shooter because it's known for making cucumbers and carrots. You put them in here and then you crunch them down, and then it spits out the slices or the shreds right into your salad. But what I like it most for is grating cheese. Now, if you buy cheese pre-grated, it comes coated in this stuff, and that's to prevent it from caking together. So that's good for shredded cheese, but if you take a block of shredded cheese, a block of cheese, and then you put it in and shred it this way, it's so much tastier. And this is much easier than having to have one of those box graters, and it's easier to clean, which is more important in my mind. Last in the line here with the appliances is a George Foreman grill, also known as an indoor grill. There are other brands that make it as well, but it's basically two plates that are heated up on either side, and you just plop things down in there and squeeze it out. Great for making paninis, which is hot pressed sandwiches. You can make burgers and chicken and all kinds of stuff, and it's slanted so that all the grease that comes will fall out into the container. And so the George Foreman says it's a lean, mean grilling machine. Even if you don't want to use it for that, what you can do is you can lift it up and wedge some things underneath it to make it level, and then it's just like a griddle. So these things are great, especially if you don't have access to a full stove or a griddle. And the biggest thing we like these things for is paninis. Now, this is one kind of grill, but in my opinion, the more important grill is outside. And with that grill, you could have a natural gas, you could have charcoal, or you could put in wood chips or propane. It's really whatever heat method is easiest for you. For a lot of people, it's propane. But I recommend you look into smoking, put some wood chips in there, make some barbecue, and call me, because I'm from Texas and that's what we like. So that's it for the optional game-changing appliances. Let's move on to the next section.